Next, from Springfield, Karen Darch, the village president of Barrington, Illinois, and current president of the Illinois Municipal League, talks about an initiative that would combine police and fire pension plans on the municipal level. This runs about 20 minutes.
Karen Darch, thanks for joining us again on the Illinois Channel, and you are the president of the Illinois Municipal League this year. One of the issues that has been going on for years, both at the state level and at the municipal level, is the whole subject of pensions and affordability. And as I understand, the Municipal League has a legislative initiative that they would like to have passed that would put more money or allow more money to be invested into pensions at the local level and shore that up. How would this work?
So public safety pensions, police and fire, are held at the municipal level, and municipal government is responsible for those pension funds. And currently, each of the funds are held at that local level. So there are over 650 police and fire funds in the state of Illinois, and those are funded by contributions from the employee, a contribution from the city or village as the employer, and then whatever investment returns those funds realize, those make up the fund. What's happening is municipalities are having to put more and more money, 10% on average per year in my own community, to just keep up the funding level in those pension funds. And part of that is market returns and what they haven't been, and also the benefit levels that have been approved by the state legislature. So our idea here, and rather than addressing benefit changes, which by law at this point we are not looking at doing, but a way to garner greater investment returns and reduce the overhead costs of administering those funds would be to consolidate those over 650 police and fire pension funds into either one statewide fund or perhaps two, one for police, one for fire, in the idea being similar to the IMRF, or the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, which currently exists as a statewide consolidated fund that covers all the municipalities, the other employees that we have. We've learned through a study of this issue, and a white paper has been prepared by the Pension Fund for Illinois Coalition, that the returns could be greatly enhanced. The IMRF makes a greater percentage on investment returns than any of our individual funds, and there's a savings in administrative overhead of about $1,000 per pension fund participant. So those are substantial savings and potentially substantial investment returns.
And when you say $1,000, as you say, per beneficiary, multiplied by how many fire and police, and by the way, this excludes Chicago, so it's the non-Chicago fire and police. How many participants are there that we would then multiply the savings of $1,000?
Sure. About 33,000 across the state, police and firemen, and this is $1,000 per year. So we're talking about $30 million a year just in the administrative overhead savings, and that doesn't count then the enhanced investment returns, and all of that then becomes money that can be put into those pension funds and reduce the burden on taxpayers in the state.
Now, famously, the state is underfunded. Most pension funds, if you look at them, are underfunded. I'm not as familiar with the municipal level funding. How adequately funded? You know, is there an average funding level that you can point to? I know that may or may not be a fair question.
I can't point to an average. I can say that if you are, the state has legislation basically that says we're all supposed to be 90% funded by 2040, and or 100% funded under another calculus. Many funds ours are 70% funded at this point in my community. Others might be as low as 15 or 20% funded. Yeah, so people are across the board. And with the GASB rule changes, and I know I'm getting in the weeds here, our funding levels, because actuarial numbers changed, have even dropped for some of ours. So they can fluctuate based on the investment returns and whatever else is happening with your fund. By consolidating them, though, it's important for the communities to understand that if one community has better funding and another is less funded, the accounts within the consolidated fund would work similarly to IMRF. That is, each community would have its quote-unquote own account, and therefore one community isn't subsidizing the funding of another, and but would over time be making contributions that would try to bring up that funding level. And of course, with the reduced overhead and the increased returns, investment returns, that would happen a lot more easily than it's happening right now.
That was going to be one of my questions. I'm trying to think of what the objections would be, and one of them might be, well, we don't want to be subsidizing if we're at 70 or 80% funding to go down to help someone who's down at 15%. If you had the money saved, let's say it's $30 million to use a round figure. For those who don't know, a lot of people don't understand that pensions are invested in the stock market. I mean, that's how you grow the money. If you averaged a 7% rate of return, you would double your money in 10 years. So that $30 million in 1 year would be $60 million 10 years down the road, and then subsequently every other year. So of that investment return money, does that stay within the individual municipal account, or does that help spread to go to some of those underfunded pensions?
Right. So all of the specifics of how the consolidated fund would work haven't been determined. But like IMRF, where and just to be clear, with IMRF, with the huge pool of money that they have to invest, they get to invest per the prudent man standard. It gives them much more flexibility in terms of investing in equities than our smaller individual public safety pension funds. So some of those are very much limited on what they can invest in, which is part of why their returns aren't as high as the IMRF fund. And then that IMRF investment return is shared among all of the accounts in the fund. So people are that really is the advantage of the greater investment return. And so and then each bill, if you will, that's sent to each community right now from IMRF, of course, reflects what their returns have been and what what they are going to owe that year based on the employees in their specific community. But we all got the benefit, members of IMRF, by having that huge pool of funds that can be invested pursuant to this prudent man rule.
Do you have a bill number, and if so, who's the sponsor?
At this point, we don't have a specific bill number. We have a couple of pieces of legislation being developed, and hope to have those coming before the Assembly.
I know as we tape this, the governor spoke to the Illinois Municipal League members yesterday. I didn't know. Have you talked to the governor about this, and do you have any feedback as far as whether he's receptive, or for that matter, some of the legislative leaders?
So we did not talk about this particular issue yesterday. With in a previous meeting with the governor, this was discussed generally, given an overview, and he seemed receptive to the concept. And of course, with his interest in reducing government's unfunded mandates and government consolidation, this, of course, 650 plus separate pension boards consolidated certainly is in line with the recommendations of his task force on government consolidation and unfunded mandates, and is consistent with the way he is thinking about that. And he actually mentioned that in our meeting, that this was something that should be looked at in relation to that. So I think he is receptive to this concept for sure, and I'm sure we'll take a good look at this legislation.
I started to say, and the big discussion around state government, as everyone who follows state government knows, is that we haven't had a budget, but this is one of the pieces of legislation that really is devoid of what happens on the budget. It's just more of a change in administration rules, you might say, right?
Yes. So the municipalities, while responsible, and the taxpayers locally, for these individual pension funds for police and fire, the state legislature makes all the rules and has made all the rules and made the various enhancements to the pension benefits that our employees have received and do receive over the years. So it is at the state legislature where we must come to get relief in terms of the way these function. So you're right. The state government budget, is not going to be impacted by this at all, but it's something critical to municipalities in terms of the way we afford and are able to handle our local finances.
Is there any major opposition from this? And I don't know if the people that sit on these investment boards, if they're getting paid, I guess they are getting paid, or where does the savings come from? I mean, you're saying if they were getting paid, then of course you're going to be eliminating those salaries. So when we say we're going to save $1,000 a year per participant or per beneficiary, how do we realize those savings?
So they aren't paid. They are two folks appointed by the local government, so the municipality, volunteer representatives, hopefully people with financial knowledge.
But that's not necessarily true, is it?
Not necessarily, no. And there is a training requirement for members of the board at this point because of the investment responsibility. Two would be active fire or police members, and a third retired fire or police person. So the board is made up of 5 folks. The savings come from each of those boards has investment people investing that individual
So
fund.
investment advisors, you might say.
Yes, investment advisors, auditors who do the audit for the fund, attorneys who represent the fund if cases for benefit cases, disability cases, pension cases come before them. And so that's where the savings are realized. With the consolidated representation, obviously you're not paying for all those individual groups that have to help 650 plus pension funds, but are paying for one set of attorneys or auditors or fund managers.
Let me ask you before we close out. You said your Barrington is about 70%. Others are maybe a little higher, but a lot of them are going to be lower. 70% compared to most is very good. Does anyone, and maybe this is per municipal government and what negotiations would be with the local fire or police, sometimes when we look at these pensions in general, one of the reasons that they're underfunded is because the benefit structure is, as I sometimes say, like at a Rolls-Royce level, while the contributions are at a Volkswagen level. Can you get the fire and police to put in more to bring their funding levels up, which is actually in their own interest, maybe not in the short run if they're more money's coming out of their paycheck, but in the long run, if they want to have that pension, it would make more sense for them to be contributing, so it's going to be there when they want to have the benefits.
So the amount that they contribute, the employee contribution, is set by the state legislature. That's not something that's bargained locally. So that has been firm and that is fixed. So you can see that the shortfall in years when there's no investment return, or if you lose money in the fund, is all coming out of the municipal or employer pool. And essentially, a guarantee may be too strong a word, but truly the municipality becomes responsible for the funding of that pension fund. And the legislature passed a law in 2011 that basically, it wasn't 2011, I'm sorry, it was later, the Intercept law, which is actually existing at this point, which would allow the fund, the pension fund, to ask the comptroller to withhold funds that would otherwise go to the municipal government and intercept them basically and direct them to the pension fund if the funding level falls for the municipality. And that, of course, is a very problematic because municipalities are struggling at this point to make their operating expenses. So the thought of operating funds being intercepted to be thrown into the pension through the state mechanism is another problematic area, big time problem for municipal government. So the bottom line is that the municipal government has the responsibility to pay these pensions by virtue of the state law as it exists right now. And it's our great concern to do everything we can to try to fund them and fund them in a way so that we can keep our operations going at the same time as making the pension commitment, meeting the pension commitment that the state has made for us. And so this consolidation concept is one thing that we can do that would go a long way toward helping us fund those pensions without further compromising our day-to-day operations.
Yeah, in short, I would say if you look at what happened with the state pensions, next fiscal year, starting June 1, or July 1 rather, the state's contribution is going to have to be $8.8 billion, which is going to come out of the general revenue fund. As I point out to people, if pensions had been properly funded, no money should have to come out of the state operating budget. And you're trying to basically avoid that same fate at the municipal level, to have these pensions earn as much as they can so that the benefits are prepaid for. Otherwise, it comes out of operating what should be the parks or trash pickup or other things services you provide.
Right, absolutely. And not to be confusing, but we're making in our community and in many, if not most communities, are making the actuarially required pension contribution each year. But when the market falls in 1 year, or you have disability cases, more than one might expect, the balance of those funds are falling, and you're having to make more and more. For our community, it's been, on average, over the last 10 years, a 10.2% increase in the amount that we have to contribute into the pension fund to make that actuarially required contribution. And that's really an unsustainable amount of money for municipalities. And some municipalities are saying even now they're not going to be able to afford their current operations and make the required pension contribution. So it's really not a matter of from the municipal level underfunding the pensions. It really is a matter of a benefit level that, and in the face of all of the other things that can happen, market, unforeseen circumstances, i.e. disability cases or what have you, that are seriously impacting the ability to afford pensions and afford them along with operations. Property taxes are a source of the pension contribution for many communities, but where the property taxes in the past might have covered the entire pension contribution that was due, many communities, if not all, are taking additional funds out of general funds to make their required pension contribution, and that really becomes a problem, particularly for non-home rule communities, which are 2/3 of those in the state, that have no ability to have limited revenue pools, so that they really don't have another way to get revenue to make the increased pension payments. So this certainly would be helpful.
Well, Mayor, we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us, and good luck to the people of Barrington and to the statewide, and we'll follow this issue.
Great. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.